Welcome back to The Explainer. Okay, I am so thrilled you're here today because we're tackling a literal household nightmare. You know the one? We're talking about rescuing severely stained hardwood floors. And the best part? We are going to fix it without calling in an outrageously expensive professional. If you've ever moved an area rug or lifted a potted plant only to find a massive, dark, ugly patch on your beautiful wood floor, you know that immediate sinking feeling in your gut. But listen, don't panic. We are going to break down the exact science and the step-by-step methodology you need to restore your floors to their former glory. So first things first, can you actually save a black-stained floor? When you see that dark, inky discoloration from a leaking plant pot, or, let's be real, a stubborn pet accident, it feels totally permanent. It looks completely ruined, and your despair is totally valid because, frankly, that stain is incredibly ugly. But the good news? Yes, you absolutely can save it. We aren't relying on internet magic tricks here. We're using a clear, scientifically backed chemical process to pull that stain right out of the wood. All right, let's dive into this. Here's our step-by-step restoration journey. First, the deep stain dilemma. Second, choose your chemical weapon. Third, crucial safety and prep. Fourth, the application process. And finally, number 5, final steps to finish. Okay, kicking things off with Section 1, the deep stain dilemma, understanding the stain. So, the reality of these deep wood stains is that they're almost always caused by prolonged exposure to water or pet urine. And when this happens, the wood reacts by turning this harsh, aggressive black or dark brown. This actually highlights the core issue perfectly. The liquid doesn't just sit on top of the floorboards, it sinks deep, deep down into the actual grain of the wood. Now, you're going to start this whole process by stripping the floor's polyurethane finish with something like a 60 grit sandpaper, just to expose the bare wood, but you'll very quickly realize something absolutely crucial about the stain itself. And that brings us to this realization. You're not trying to sand the stain out. Seriously, let that sink in for a second. You cannot simply aggressively sand the wood away until the stain disappears, because the stain is just way too deep. If you try, you'll literally just carve a permanent dip into your floorboards. Instead, we've got to chemically pull the tannins and the oxidation out of the wood fibers. We're letting chemistry do the heavy lifting that sandpaper simply can't handle. Moving right along to Section 2, choose your chemical weapon. Choosing the bleach. Depending on what exactly you're dealing with, you've basically got 2 primary avenues. Think of it like choosing between a floodlight and a laser beam. On one side, we have a 2-part wood bleach. This chemical reaction pulls tannins out of the wood and lightens whatever is there. Keep in mind, if you have pet urine stains, a 2-part bleach will lighten them, for sure, but it might not completely erase them. It's a chemical wood bleach, not laundry fabric bleach. On the other side, for those incredibly deep, specific spots like a harsh water ring from a plant, you can use targeted acids. Specifically, applying a 20% food-grade hydrogen peroxide directly to the stain to heavily oxidize the discoloration. Now check this out. For those super stubborn, leftover dark lines that even the hydrogen peroxide might miss, you can actually mix a targeted DIY 10% oxalic acid solution. The exact recipe is taking 10 grams of oxalic acid crystals and dissolving them into 100 milliliters of warm water. You just let it set for a few hours and then carefully paint it directly onto the stubborn, dark lines. I'm telling you, it is incredibly effective. A total game changer. Which brings us to Section 3. Crucial safety and prep, protecting yourself. Look, this part is absolutely non-negotiable. You must have the right safety gear. You need an N95 mask. You absolutely do not want to breathe these materials into your lungs, especially if you're in a tight, enclosed room. You also need eye protection. Protective glasses are a must, and heavy-duty rubber gloves. If you get 20% hydrogen peroxide on your bare hands, it will rapidly start oxidizing your skin, and trust me, it hurts immensely. Oh, and one more thing, you must only ever mix your chemicals in an open-top bucket. Actually, speaking of gloves, I love this pro tip from hardwood floor expert Lenny Hall. He says, I double up my gloves on the sake of not ripping a glove mid-process. Think about it. If you're rubbing chemical into a floor and your single glove snags on a stray wood splinter and tears, you instantly have harsh chemicals soaking into your skin. By wearing 2 pairs of rubber gloves, if that outer one rips, you just pull the torn one off, pop a brand new one over the clean base layer, and your skin is never exposed. It's a brilliant, simple hack. Now remember a second ago when I mentioned using an open-top bucket? Well, here's exactly why. Danger, pressure, and heat. When you mix a 2-part wood bleach, those chemicals marry and actually start generating heat. But more importantly, the mixture off-gases. If you put this mixture into a sealed spray bottle or a pump sprayer, that off-gassing creates continuous building pressure. It will literally build up until it forcefully ruptures or flat out explodes the container. No way. Never use a sealed pump bottle. Always use an open bucket.
Let's get to the fun part. Section 4. The application process. Applying the chemical.
First off, mix small batches. As the chemical pulls the tannins out of the floor, your rag is going to turn this gross yellow-brown color. Mixing small batches prevents you from contaminating your whole clean solution. Second, physically move your bucket directly over the stain. You do not want to be trailing chemical drips across your perfectly good floorboards. And third, apply it nice and evenly. As for your actual technique, soak the rag, half wring it out, and stay with the grain of the wood. Wipe in a clean left-to-right motion. What you do not want to do is rub aggressively across the grain. And whatever you do, please do not leave excess puddles behind. If you leave a big pool of bleach, it's going to pull the dust and tannins up, and when it dries, it leaves a permanent, light white dust mark baked right into your floor. Nobody wants that. Just pick the puddle back up with your rag and move it around to keep the floor wet, but not pulling. To really understand what's happening under the surface here, think of this phrase. It's just like water popping the floor. See, wood bleach is about 94% water. When you apply it, that water actually opens up the grain of the wood floor, a technique professionals call water popping. It acts like a transport system, carrying the active chemicals deep into the wood fibers so it can do its job of blanching out those deeply embedded discolorations. Almost there. Section 5. Final steps to finish. Completing the floor. Okay, patience is literally your best friend right here. You might spend an hour sanding and applying chemicals, but then you've got to wait overnight. Even if the floor looks completely bone dry to the naked eye, the chemical is still inside the wood fibers, working and off-gassing. If you rush it and seal the floor too early, you trap that chemical reaction right under your new finish. Just give it until the next morning. When you come back the next morning, here's your final cleanup protocol. First, if you used oxalic acid or peroxide, wipe the area down with a damp cloth twice to get rid of any residual acid, then wipe it completely dry. Next, hit it with a final sanding. A 120 or 180 grit sandpaper works beautifully to ensure the grain is smooth and uniform with the rest of your floor. Finally, you'll lay down your matching wood stain, followed by 3 coats of your finish, something like a nice satin polyurethane. And pro tip, be sure to lightly sand with a superfine 220 grit sandpaper between each of those polyurethane coats for a flawlessly smooth finish. And finally, Section 6, the big payoff, money saved. The result you get from this is truly staggering. By using this localized, chemical-based approach, you can completely erase those dark, rotting-looking stains so they blend seamlessly back into the rest of the floor. And by doing that, you just saved thousands of dollars. Literally thousands. You achieve this beautiful, pro-level result without having to pay a crew to completely resurface your home's entire flooring. That is an incredible return on investment for just a weekend of careful, methodical work. By understanding the science of wood tannins, oxidation, and the strict safety protocols for handling these specific acids and bleaches, you've completely conquered a problem that looks permanently disastrous to most homeowners. You now have the knowledge and the power to restore the beauty of natural wood all by yourself. So, armed with this level of expert understanding, what seemingly impossible DIY project will you tackle next? Keep learning, stay safe out there, and I will see you next time.